So as the opening and the conclusion to these Titanic rankings videos, I'm starting to do this thing where I do like a funny little introduction and then I get a title card and then I do the introduction in front of the camera for a few paragraphs before I get to the conclusion at the end. But unfortunately, it's been a bit messed up for this episode because, well, I did film an introduction that involved me dressing up as Molly from Titanic The Legend Goes On with the strapless dress and everything, and I did my hair all Edwardian-like. It just did not go well. I don't know what was wrong with the microphone that day, but it just did not want to record my sound clearly, and you could barely understand me under all the static. And I've now left it a bit too late to re-record all that because it was a bit of a palaver setting it all up. Instead, I will do a little gag here by making like this movie and resorting to the lowest common denominator.
I'm not here to say I'm sorry. I'm not here to lie to you. I'm here to say I'm ready, that I finally fought it through. I'm not giving up, oh no. Obviously we care what you think, but she's just being a bit over the top.
Can I be honest with you two? You have the worst attitude of any contestants I have ever met.
I wanna start a fight.
This is the Titanic movie with the rapping dog. Don't you just hate it? I have wondered how to approach this movie as it has been approached several times by many others. And I don't want to repeat myself from last time, but this supports my point that people think they can't make an animated movie without trying to cater exclusively to children, and it has nothing for adults to enjoy. So say you'd seen this movie as a child and then you came back to it years later wondering what it's like now, and it will not hold up. There is nothing here but cringe and the everlasting question of wondering what the hell these people were thinking. The aesthetics of this film screams cheap. The frame rate of the animation and how the comical characters just have zero weight to them. On the one hand, it's at least more colourful than Legend of the Titanic, but that's all it has going for it. All the characters, and I mean all the characters, are twisted forms of pre-existing ones from recognisable Warner Brothers, Disney and Don Bluth properties. They are manipulated just enough to avoid the shadow of Disney lawyers, a shadow that hangs over YouTubers every day of their lives, but you can still recognise who they are meant to be ripping off. They didn't even switch the main colour around on the stepsisters. Actually, no, you know what they are? They're the product of that knockoff machine in Chip and Dale. This is one of those awful mockbusters that Sweet Pete forced them to film. This is canon now. It makes too much sense for this to exist had it not been put through that awful machine. Film theory, where you at? It's interesting to note that a long time ago, Cartoon Network were going to scrap all the Speedy Gonzales cartoons when they bought the rights to show them on their channel, because they were worried that Gonzales presented a negative Mexican stereotype. However, Mexican people actually turned around and said they love Speedy Gonzales because he was a cultural icon and he was brought back. I'm saying this because the cheap knockoff they have in this film is the negative Mexican stereotype that Cartoon Network was afraid of presenting. The creators decided to include this character, or a mock-off of the character, because they knew he was popular, but not understanding why he was popular. Speedy Gonzales was more than just being fast and Mexican. He was clever, he was impulsive, and he was also a good friend, and he knew how to outsmart Sylvester and Daffy Duck. In a way, this one twisted vision of a once beloved character encapsulates everything wrong with how this movie is structured, written and executed. You see these mistakes in bad animated movies all the time, and just bad things in general. The way Battlefield Earth had 1 billion Dutch angles because they thought it looked cool, but they didn't understand why it was cool. The creators of bad animated movies clearly understand that their superior counterparts have animal sidekicks in them. They have musical numbers and love stories, but they don't understand what makes them work beyond a surface layer. Animal sidekicks are used to lighten the mood of some otherwise heavy subject matter. My stepmother is trying to kill me. My stepmother and stepsisters are emotionally abusing me. I am being suffocated in this narrow-minded society. A very obvious closeted gay metaphor. They also provide a receiver for the main characters to talk to, so the exposition sounds more natural. Sometimes it's better that they don't talk, so that way the animators have more fun characterising them. But if they are going to talk, they need a reason to. And they have to do something that impacts the plot, otherwise they are just pointless characters. And sometimes their comic relief is only as good as their voice actor. I'd say a lot of the Barbie movies like Princess and the Pauper, Island Princess and the 12 Dancing Princesses, oh my god, there are so many Barbie princess movies, are consistent with their talking animals where they can understand each other and their conversations impact the plot. But when they have a character that can talk to animals, they make it clear that only that character can communicate with them. The only animal characters in Legend Goes On that impact the plot are Fritz the rapping dog, the Yiddish mouse, and possibly the Dalmatians. Everyone else is superfluous. Musical numbers are great for animated movies too. The heightened reality that comes with musicals allows for great sequences with no limits to what you can show. You can shove all the symbolism in there and the song can live forever if done well. It is so easy to point out which songs were made out of dedication and passion and which ones were made as a result of a handful of out-of-touch people pointing at charts. If you think your film needs a rap number because kids like that rap music and you've never rapped before, the least you can do is pick an artist to do it for you. Otherwise, you show your age. In Legend Goes On, the rest of the film seems rooted in 1912. Aside from some anachronistic clothing and the torch song that tried to be My Heart Will Go On. So a rap number not only sticks out like a sore thumb, it shoves the sore thumb up your nose and twists, and it's not comfortable for anyone. Love stories are another matter because their point and purpose has changed over time. But overall, you should want the couple to get together for a reason, other than them being conventionally attractive. The love story shouldn't be just about them being in love. Something has to be in the way of them being together to cause a conflict that they might overcome or compromise with or fall to. The Jack and Rose story that this film gender flips was also about crossing the class divide, and no matter how impossible it may seem, you always have a choice as to how to live your best life. William, on the other hand, is written to be a smug, boring bastard who freely paints himself as saving Angelica from poverty, whether she wants it or not. She's very hesitant on this, but he keeps pushing forward anyway. It's White Knight syndrome, and I hate him for it. I could have settled for Cinderella on the Titanic. I can see something like that happening. A steerage passenger might sneak up to first class in a nice dress that they might have bought or stolen, and they fall in love with a young male passenger. The problem is, this narrative is sharing screen time with 12 different stories going on at once. You have the Cinderella story with Angelica and William, Angelica looking for her estranged mother, who happens to be William's nanny, Gertrude taking her daughters to America to find husbands, Gertrude's cat wanting to eat the mouse family because that's all cats ever do in animated movies. This movie was made by cat racists. The Dalmatians expecting puppies, Corinthia the jewel thief training her incompetent nephews into stealing jewellery because she can't do it herself, clearly, along with an eccentric detective pursuing them, the disgraced banker hoping to go to America to find someone rich to free him from his debts, the overweight woman who wears fake jewellery to attract a wealthy man and uses her spaniel to trip potential suitors up, William's secretary Gaston lusting over big boob Molly, the magpie who pickpockets but somehow that's not as bad as what the jewel thieves are doing, even though it's the exact same thing, big boob Molly's conflict with the grumpy officer, and the older rich woman with her 2 grandchildren. I know there are probably more, but I really don't care at this point. All that and possibly more in less than 90 minutes. And to top it all off, you have a sinking ship. There are 2 versions of this movie. The extended version is 10 minutes longer and has different songs, but I can't decide which is worse. The sinking is rushed, to put it lightly. A lot of these Titanics depict the sinking as if she sank in less than 20 minutes. Both animated movies gloss over the sinking so quickly, but at least this one acknowledges people died, although it's in the most half-hearted way possible. The only known characters who die are the disgraced banker and Winnie, who go out in a broadcast love pact, and Big Boob Molly going down with the band. Again, there was supposed to be another gag here. Be in that strapless dress, and I was supposed to make a joke about my breasts at the expense of Molly's. But basically, the reason Molly died was because in the event of an emergency, your breasts do not act as a flotation device, they just drag you down to the bottom of the sea. So enjoy that visual. That's why my shoulders are so big. Every time I go swimming, I'm fighting to keep myself afloat. So after all that, are there any real-life people depicted in this movie? Yes and no. Once again, you see Captain Smith, more accurately appearing as his real-life counterpart, but he doesn't have any impact on the billions of subplots besides interacting with a few minor characters. During the sinking, Gaston worms his way onto a lifeboat by claiming he's a yachtsman, which is what Arthur Puchin said when Lightoller let him get on a lifeboat. It does imply, however unintentionally, that Puchin lied to get into a lifeboat. Someone's family needs to sue. You see this sour-faced officer throughout the movie, but he's never actually named. Because he's referred to as second in command of the Titanic by Angelica, some have assumed he's meant to be Murdoch, who died in the sinking. I think he's more of a composite character of Murdoch, Lightoller and Quartermaster Hitchens, because Hitchens was infamously the Titanic crew member who kept barking orders at the other occupants of Lifeboat 6. Either way, it is disrespectful to show a Titanic officer literally pushing other people out of the boat so he can save his own life. It insults all the people who risked their own safety to save people that night. Whether you meant it or not, the insult is still there. While this movie killed off a lot of characters, it didn't kill off anyone who mattered. William White knights his way down to 3rd class and tears down the Boswick Gate to let the poor people into the lifeboats. Then after seeing Angelica onto a boat, he just stays behind to break windows with wicker chairs. Okay, he survives the sinking, somehow. The film doesn't acknowledge that the water is freezing. In fact, very few of these entries actually acknowledge that you won't survive the water for long. So far I think only A Night to Remember and James Cameron's Titanic explain why someone can't just stay afloat and wait for the Carpathia.
What sort of a sailor are you that you're afraid of falling in the water?
Oh, I don't know, Angelica. Perhaps a sailor who knows more about hypothermia than you do, you dumb bitch. William is miraculously saved from the water by Angelica. Out of the many, many people who were in the sea at the time, she just happens to stumble by him on the 2nd attempt. And she also just reunited with her birth mother. And we're meant to believe that all the survivors who were good were allowed to live happily ever after. Even all the animals who were in the ship's hold when the iceberg struck. But they somehow managed to survive. I don't know how they could have done that. You don't see how. They should have all drowned like the rest of the animals on the Titanic, apart from the few dogs that were brought onto lifeboats. The bad guys like Gaston, Gertrude and her daughters and Corinthia all get what's coming to them. With Gaston taking a new job where he has to do literally all of the chores. Gertrude wanted her daughters to marry wealthy men, but they married Kirk and Dirk, who were penniless. And Corinthia went to jail. This movie, unsurprisingly, was awful from start to finish, and I'm so glad that we've gotten the animated movies out of the way. The rest are all live action. Hopefully the next entry will be shorter. I made a little teaser here for you to guess what it might be. I don't think you can guess what it is, because this is a really, really obscure one. Of course, if you're a patron, you already know what it is because the first 4 Titanic reviews are up on Patreon right now. If you'd like to see them and support the channel, you can sign up and you can get videos and scripts ahead of time and your name in the credits. And the highest level contributors, my King and Queen patrons, they have the honour of getting a shout out in the credits for practically every single video that I make. This is my shout out for Anastasia Gracia, Alison Cuff, Larissa, Lady Eternal and Leslie Williams. Thank you guys so much, and remember you can also support the channel by subscribing and making sure you like the video because the algorithm's being a bitch again. When is it not a bitch? Yeah, and what did you guys think of the animated Titanic movies? Do you find anything redeeming in them, or do you just wish that they would make like the E.T. game and just bury them all in a landfill for the rest of eternity.
Hold me, never let me go.